How to Ask a Woman for Intimacy. Psychological Trick. Part 1. Intimacy. A word that carries weight, mystery, and sometimes confusion for men. How do you ask for it? How do you communicate desire without sounding needy? How do you invite her into closeness without pushing her away? Most men get this wrong. They either rush, beg, or pressure, and when they do, the woman feels turned off, guarded, even resistant. But what if I told you there's a way to ask for intimacy without words that sound desperate, without pressure, and without rejection? A way rooted in psychology. A way that uses confidence, timing, and subtlety. A way that makes her lean into you, instead of pulling away. The first mistake most men make when men ask for intimacy, they usually approach it like a transaction. They think, if I do this for her, maybe she'll give me that. Or worse, they just blurt it out, do you want to? But intimacy is not a transaction. It's not something you convince her into. It's something you invite her into. And the difference between convincing and inviting is everything. Convincing comes from fear. Inviting comes from confidence. Why women resist pressure. Here's a psychological truth. The more someone feels pressured into a choice, the less likely they are to choose it. When you pressure a woman into intimacy, even subtly, she feels her freedom shrinking. And when freedom shrinks, resistance grows. That's why begging never works. That's why rushing never works. That's why pushing for intimacy too soon backfires, because intimacy requires trust, safety, and desire, not pressure. The psychological trick. Permission through energies. So how do you ask without asking? How do you signal desire without sounding needy? Here's the trick. You create an atmosphere where intimacy feels natural, not forced. Women don't respond to words first. They respond to energy, presence, and subtle cues. When you are calm, confident, and connected, she feels it. When you are desperate, anxious, or fidgeting, she feels that too. So the real ask is not in the words you speak. It's in the energy you bring, the power of touch and timing. A light touch on her hand, a glance that lingers a little longer, leaning closer when she leans in. These are the unspoken ways of asking. These are the psychological signals that build intimacy step by step. If she leans away, you don't chase. If she leans closer, you respond naturally. It's a dance, not a demand. And when you master this subtle dance, intimacy becomes the natural next step. The secret of not asking directly. Here's the paradox. The best way to ask for intimacy is not to ask directly, because intimacy grows from tension, not negotiation. It grows from mutual desire, not a deal. Instead of saying, can we create a space where she wants to, instead of asking, do you want to, you let your presence and energy ask for you, because the strongest form of persuasion is not pressured suggestion. Why this works? This works because women are emotional decision makers. They don't just listen to what you say, they feel what you radiate. When you stay calm, confident, and present, she feels safe. When you guide gently instead of pushing, she feels drawn. When you don't need her validation, she feels your strength. And that strength is irresistible. Because true intimacy isn't something you take, it's something you both step into naturally, freely, and without fear. Part 2. Intimacy doesn't begin in the bedroom, it begins in the mind. It begins in the way she feels around you, safe, understood, and wanted without being pressured. Most men think intimacy is a moment. In reality, it's a build-up, a gradual layering of signals, trust, and emotions that create space for closeness. Why men fail when they rush. When a man rushes to ask for intimacy, he skips the process. He thinks desire's a switch, just flip it on and it happens. But for women, intimacy is not a switch, it's a flame. It starts small, and with the right conditions, warmth, safety, and excitement, it grows into something powerful. When you rush, you blow on the flame too hard and extinguish it. When you take your time, you let it grow until she feels ready. That's why patience is not weakness, it's strategy. The psychological trick. Curiosity instead of pressure. Here's a secret. Instead of asking directly, spark curiosity. Curiosity is one of the strongest psychological triggers. When she's curious about what you're thinking, feeling, or planning, she leans in, she opens up, she becomes receptive. So instead of bluntly asking for intimacy, you drop subtle hints in your body language, tone, and timing that make her wonder. A slow pause in conversation, a look that lingers on her lips, a quiet moment where you don't fill the silence but simply hold eye contact. Her mind begins to race. What is he thinking? Does he want me? And when she starts asking herself those questions, you no longer have to ask. Creating safety through presence. No woman can relax into intimacy if she feels judged, unsafe, or hurried. That's why your presence matters more than your words. Being present means you're not distracted by your phone. You're not rushing, you're not treating her like a checklist. You're here, with her, in the moment. That presence calms her nervous system, and when she's calm, her walls drop. Most men lose intimacy not because they're unattractive, but because they're absent mentally or emotionally. But when you're present, she feels like she's the only woman in the world. That is what makes her open up. Touch as a language. Words can be misinterpreted, but touch, when done respectfully and gently, speaks a universal language. You don't grab, you don't force. You invite through gradual escalating touch, a brush of her hand, a hand on the lower back while guiding her through a door, a gentle touch on her shoulder when you lean in to whisper something. Each touch, light, respectful and confident, sends a message. I want to be close to you. If she welcomes it, she leans in. If she hesitates, you pause. That pause is power, because it shows her you respect her boundaries. Respect builds trust, and trust builds intimacy. Why asking directly feels wrong. Imagine this. A woman is enjoying your company, laughing, feeling good, and suddenly you break the flow with, "Do you want to have intimacy with me?" The mood shatters. It feels awkward. It feels forced. That's why direct asking rarely works. It exposes insecurity. It shows you're unsure of yourself. But when intimacy is guided, not requested, when it flows naturally from your energy and her comfort, she doesn't just agree, she wants it. The silent invitation. So, what is the psychological trick? It's this. Instead of asking with words, ask with energy. Instead of demanding, suggest. Instead of pushing, invite. Your calmness is the question. Your touch is the signal. Your presence is the answer she's waiting to give. And when the timing is right, when you've built curiosity, safety and trust, she won't wait for you to ask. She'll respond naturally, freely, and willingly, because intimacy is never something you chase. It's something you create space for. Part 3. Intimacy is not about what you ask. It's about how you make her feel before you ever ask. Most men focus only on the words. How do I say it? What exact line should I use? But the truth is, if the energy isn't there, the words don't matter. If she doesn't already feel safe, connected, and drawn toward you, no phrase in the world will magically flip the switch. That's why the real psychological trick isn't about the line you use. It's about the frame you set. Frame is everything. A frame is the invisible atmosphere you create around her. It's the emotional world she steps into when she's with you. If your frame is needy, she feels pressure. If your frame is nervous, she feels tense. But if your frame is calm, grounded and confident, she feels free. And freedom is what makes intimacy possible. Because intimacy is not about control. It's about surrender. And no one can surrender in an environment where they feel pushed. Why words fail without energy? Imagine whispering the most romantic line in the world, but your voice is shaky. Your eyes dart away, and your body language screams fear. She won't feel the words, she feel the fear. Now imagine saying something simple, "Come here," but your voice is steady. Your presence is calm. Your eyes are locked into hers with warmth and certainty. She feels safe. She feels wanted. She feels drawn. It's not the words, it's the energy behind them. The dance of escalation. Asking for intimacy is like dancing. You don't step on her feet. You guide her gently, step by step. Start small. See how she responds. If she leans in, take another step. If she hesitates, slow down. This dance of escalation is what builds desire, a touch that lingers a second longer than usual, eye contact that holds steady even in silence, your voice dropping slightly, slower, more deliberate. These are all subtle invitations. They're not questions, but they invite an answer. If she's ready, she'll answer with her body language, leaning closer, touching back, holding your gaze. If she's not, she'll pull back. And if she does, you don't get upset. You respect the pause, because respecting the pause shows her that intimacy with you will always be safe. The power of suggestion. The human mind is wired to respond more strongly to suggestion than to direct commands. When you suggest, her mind fills in the blanks. She imagines what you mean. She creates her own picture. And the picture she creates will always be more powerful than the one you force. That's why subtle lines work better than blunt ones. Not, "Let's do this right now," but "I love how close we are right now." Not, "Can we be intimate?" but "I love how good it feels to hold you like this." See the difference? One is a demand. The other is a doorway.